Hi, today I want to come back to you on the issue of a Ralph and Russo bankruptcy and failure and whatever. I have something which I think is quite topical to talk about in relation to this Ralph and Russo fashion house, luxury house, allegedly. A few years ago, I had one of a pattern cutters, pattern makers, a French guy, who actually left his very young family behind in Paris and moved to London to actually work for them as a pattern maker and pattern cutter. And then he contacted me because he said he had been fired from Ralph and Russo on grounds which were completely incorrect. And basically he had been left high and dry. They barely paid his last salary and told him to fuck off, really, and to go back to Paris. Of course, they were not going to pay the Eurostar ticket or expenses. So it was just pretty bad, the way they had, disposed of him. And so that's why he reached out to us at Crefovi, at our fashion law firm Crefovi, to basically negotiate a deal, a settlement, hopefully, with Ralph and Russo. So I started looking into, of course, this case when our client instructed us. And firstly, I could see that actually it was not an employee, that Ralph and Russo had actually made him come over from Paris to London on the premises of sending him like an employment agreement in the long term, but for the short term, he would be just basically like temping, like on a self-employed basis, So he basically was just like a contractor, but he was not an employee of Ralph and Russo, and this sort of contracting / self-employment agreement was dreadful. He, in terms of the amount of his salary first, secondly, none of his expenses were refunded. I mean, it was just like a one-pager, this sort of contractor self-employed agreement, and so I noticed that. Then I reached out to these people who were supposed to assume the HR functions at Ralph and Russo and said, look, what happened here? We need to sort this out, because otherwise my client will have no other option but to sue and to have the contract qualified as a employment agreement, because at the end of the day he was working probably around 60, 70 hours a week, and definitely was in a subordination position towards Ralph and Russo, and therefore the contractual, self-employment alleged status was total bollocks, excuse my French, because he was completely, an employee in terms of being very, very much subordinated to the management at Ralph and Russo, who were ruthless, absolutely ruthless. As I said, he was working day in, day out, nights, weekends, and then they fired him on saying that he was incompetent and that he had stolen some shit, excuse my French, but really some stupid thing, like some pattern designs and stuff like that. Well, the guy was completely honest. He was coming from the fashion, a very well-regarded fashion house in Paris. I think it was Balenciaga or something like that. So they were ruthless. The management, Ralph and these people, Ralph and Russo, were ruthless. It was an extremely toxic environment, as he explained to me. And so, as I said, I emailed this HR department at Ralph and Russo. Had barely any reply whatsoever. They didn't have any HR manager that could be. They didn't have an HR manager. They just had someone who was like sort of secretary, but they didn't have a proper HR manager who knew the rules about, English law, employment, rules, etc. It was really appalling. I've never seen this before. So basically, I turned back to my client. I said to him, I'm afraid if you want to get something from these people, since they are completely unresponsive and they seem to not understand what is at stake here, in terms of, the probability of them being sued and all this craziness being exposed to the markets and to the public awareness, I'm afraid at this stage, after 2 or 3 months of trying to engage into a without prejudice settlement process, I'm afraid I have come to the conclusion it's not going to work out. It's impossible with these people from Ralph and Russo. So your option is to actually file a lawsuit with the employment tribunal in England. My client refused to do that and to pursue this avenue for reasons which are his own. And that was that. The matter finished and stopped at this juncture. But basically, what my take-out from this story was that I knew, I knew since probably 2014, 2016, when my client called me and we had this matter to deal with for him. I knew that Ralph and Russo were total bullies and for their staff, probably also their suppliers. So they were total bullies. They created an extremely toxic environment in the company. They mismanaged funds, and they had no idea of, the basic structures that any business in England should have in terms of, HR support, legal functionality, probably also accounting. I mean, I knew it was a disaster, a disaster in the making, basically. And I'm actually surprised that they managed to, keep up with appearances and keep this craziness going up until 2021. I'm surprised that it only came out in 2021, probably because they were able to pump a lot of money in the business through private investors who stupidly invested in their shitey business. So, yeah, I really hope they actually, get some criminal sanctions against them, this Ralph and Russo people, because it was so plain, so much in view, that they were completely mismanaging this company and basically harming people around them and taking advantage and bullying them. I really do hope that they actually get criminally convicted because of a mismanagement of the business and funds, etc. Of course, I really do hope that their assets will be seized, personal assets will be seized, and that they will also become personally bankrupt, because this is what they deserve. And another thing as well, I think it's very much of a shame that PR, the press, public relations, journalists and celebrities basically ignore all these very important points of having a proper structure, paying your employees, treating them right, having some proper accounting, some proper HR, proper legal functions. So they just don't care about this, all these harpanates who are wearing the clothes and dresses, etc. And so, yeah, Ralph Russo had some great PR. They had some great, press clippings, and a lot of celebrities who were wearing their dresses probably didn't even pay for it. So nobody was coming back into the business. It was just publicity. But basically, it was just, everything. It was completely on the basis of nothing. Everything was fake. And as I said, I'm surprised it took such a long time for these people to be found out. And I hope they're going to pay a dear price for their lack of accountability and responsibility for the dreadful actions that they've taken against people around them. Bye!